what is up to y'all? How do y'all feel about it?
I'm happy to take them off. If you want to keep them on, I'll take them off if you'd like to.
No, I'm gonna keep mine on, but
That's
whatever you prefer.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
Perfect.
On the last panel that I participated in, we kept them on unless we were speaking, and when we were speaking, we took them off.
Sounds
And
like a
then
good
we're-
compromise.
Are you okay
Yep,
with that?
that sounds great.
The audio will sound a lot better if the masks aren't on when you're talking.
Right.
Don, use your mic because he's got to have your ear through the speakers.
You want to?
He needs the ear through the
Oh,
speakers.
okay.
He's got his.
Kerwin?
We haven't had a chance to one of them told me you keep missing. So I'm going, no, I didn't, I just wanted to be consistent where.
Nah, it's hard. It's like shaking.
I know.
So, I know.
Not in jail. I don't know if you see my comments last week at that time.
I know. Yes, thank you, yes. Love John.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe afterwards, I don't wanna. Yeah, Lake County, so. Hey, Kim, you want me to hold the space with friends and the partners?
I know he's on.
Oh,
but I-
yeah, but, yeah. Yeah, he just spent all his time over there. Like, yes. But, yeah.
I saw when I was down there.
Hey, how are you?
Hello, hello, do y'all hear me? Everybody can hear me?
Signatures,
Okay.
you know about what they did to them.
Hey, everybody, we are getting ready to start. If you haven't made it here yet, there's still time for you to get here. So come on out, join us in the John Chavis Reception Hall at the John Chavis Community Center. If you cannot get here, stay on the live stream, keep watching, submit your questions. We have one of our team members, Sierra Cobb, who will be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions or if you want to make comments, please feel free to include them in the chat, and we will do as best we can to get to them. All right, folks.
Dawn, I didn't hear you at all.
You didn't hear me at all?
No, it wasn't picking up at all.
How about, hello, hello, can you hear that? Okay, I'm not holding it closer. Maybe I need to take my mask.
Yeah, our audience is, I could, but the audience says it's low.
It's low. Okay, is that audience, is that better?
Keep talking.
Keep talking, okay. We have all of our panelists here. We are trying to be very, very respectful of everyone's time. We know it's a Thursday evening. It's been a long week for everybody. So we are trying to be respectful of everyone's time and get as much done as we can, cover as much ground as we can in the next hour and 15 minutes or so. So to that end, we are going to go ahead and get started in just a few minutes.
It's hard to recognize people sometimes.
John, would you let me make an announcement if anybody wants to sign a petition? Can I, or you want me to wait till after?
Let's wait till after. Okay, thank you.
All right, folks, it is right at 6 o'clock. And as promised, we're going to be respectful of everyone's time. and get started right away. So first, I want to thank everyone who is watching us here live and who is watching on live stream. I want to thank you for being involved citizens, for caring about the state of justice in Wake County, and being a part of the conversation and the solutions about moving us forward. We are hosting this forum because, like everyone else in this country, what we saw was that America is at a reckoning. A reckoning about the realization of how deeply flawed our criminal justice system is, how much bias is baked into our criminal justice system, and how much work we have to do as a community to get to a place where that system is equitable and fair for all citizens. To that end, Emancipate NC is committed to rooting out systemic and institutional racism, ending mass incarceration, and reimagining what justice and public safety looks like.
Yes.
So, that is why we are here, and that is why we have brought these folks together, because who we have here on this panel is an amazing panel of folks that are an incredible cross-section that we don't get to see often, all at the same table. So we have system actors, we have community advocates, we have folks who are deeply embedded in the most deeply impacted communities in Wake County, specifically in Raleigh, here to speak to all of their experiences. And what we know for sure is that those experiences are going to be divergent from where you are in the system. That's why we felt it was important to have people from every spectrum participate in this panel so that we can get all of the voices. Because what we know at Emancipate NC, and what everyone else knows too, is that it is the people that are closest to the problem that have the best solutions. To that end, we're going to jump right in. So what we're going to do is we're going to give each of our 4 panelists about 2 minutes to introduce themselves. I did not take the time to, and let me also stop and say, this is not going to be your traditional forum, okay? Why? Because Emancipate doesn't do anything traditional, right? We make up the rules as we go along. So what we're going to do here today is I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves. I'm not going to read their accolades. I'm going to give them the opportunity to let them tell you what they think you need to know about them, for you to trust them, for you to trust their voice, and for you to trust their opinions. We're going to give each one of our panelists 2 minutes to do that. Once we finish our introductions, then we are going to go into something that I would like to call speed dating questions, okay? So, because another thing that we want to do here today is not have you come out and have a forum and listen to people talk and not actually hear anybody say anything. So we're going to ask some very specific yes or no questions. Give each give each panelist their yes or no. So we want a yes or no answer. That's it. And then 30 seconds, maybe if you need to expand, but no more than that. And then we're gonna bang those speed date questions out, right? So we can get a feel for who we're talking to. And then after the speed dating questions are done, we're gonna give each candidate probably about 5 minutes to discuss whichever of the speed dating questions was most compelling to them, or whatever they think is most important to be elevated in the conversation about reimagining what criminal justice looks like here in Wake County, and also how we get to a place of equity. So to that end, I'm going to start with the panelist that is closest to me, District Attorney Lorrin Freeman.
Good evening, I'm Lorrin Freeman. I am the Wake County District Attorney, and I've been honored to serve our community in that capacity since January of 2015. Prior to that, I was the elected clerk of court here for 8 years. I'm grateful for this opportunity to be here and talk to people tonight about these very important issues. I think, as Dawn has already said, that many people in America, after the murder of George Floyd, really began to try to figure out and assess where are we in terms of equity, not only within our criminal justice system, but within our society in general. I would say that I've been involved in this work actually since before I was even an elected official, when I served on the Human Relations Commission for the City of Raleigh back in the early 2000s. And so, as your district attorney, we have been engaged in many projects to try and help our community and try and improve equity within our community, and I look forward to the opportunity to talk about those and to also talk about what has been, unfortunately, an increase in violence over the past year, and why that's important when we talk about making sure that people of color have opportunity and are able to rise up within our society.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kerwin Pittman. I'm a social justice activist in the city of Raleigh. I'm a founder and executive director of REPS, Recidivism Reduction Educational Program Services. I'm a field director for Emancipate North Carolina. I sit on the State Reentry Council Collaborative, commissioned by Governor Cooper, as well as I sit on the North Carolina Task Force for Racial Equity and Criminal Justice, commissioned by Governor Cooper as well. But most importantly, I'm a black man in the state of North Carolina and the city of Raleigh. And I too am justice impacted and justice involved directly. So the system that I once went through, I am now helping to transform this system in a way that has never been imagined in the state of North Carolina.
Yes.
And so I'm not running for no particular office. I'm just a concerned citizen utilizing my voice and my platform to try to make a difference in this.
My name is Damon Chetson, and I'm a criminal defense attorney in Raleigh. I've been a criminal defense attorney for the last 12 years, and I'm running for Wake County District Attorney as a Democrat for the March 2022 primary. For the last 7 years, I represented people facing the death penalty in Wake County. In 2019, I represented one of two people that our Wake County District Attorney attempted to get the death penalty on, and we secured a life verdict. I have represented people on the death row. I have also represented people as part of my practice pro bono, that is without charge, who have been prosecuted by the Wake County District Attorney for protesting as part of Reverend Barber's Moral Monday protests for racial and economic equity up on Jones Street with our legislature.
Attorney Chetson, can I ask you to just put the mic a little bit closer?
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe it's off. Is it off, on now? Off now?
You were
Great.
good.
Let me repeat that. I represented folks who've been charged by the Wake County District Attorney, and I'm not a career politician, so it's rare that I talk to people that are not part of juries. But I represented people charged with protest actions, and I think that's better, up on Jones Street. I also represented people charged as part of the protests last summer when George Floyd was murdered by Derek Chauvin. And I was out there at some of the nights as a legal observer watching Raleigh police overreact. And so I have done those sorts of things, and I am, again, currently running for Wake County District Attorney.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Kimberly Muktarian. I am president of Save Our Sons and also CEO of SOS Consulting Group. I am born and raised Raleigh, North Carolina, where I am the proud mother of 4 children, 2 being black men, 19 and 30, here in Raleigh. I am also a social justice advocate who believes strongly in making reparations and restoration to the black community. As an advocate, I'm a grassroots leader who have seen 7 black men die in 7 years. 2 of those have died within 3 years of each other, and they are both brothers. Of those 7, none of them were warranted a penny, yet the city of Raleigh will welcome George Floyd Memorial to the grounds of North Carolina. We are tired of asking for a justice system that have deliberately denied us justice. And today I am here to make sure that our campaign runners are not only saying what they want to hear, what we want to hear them say, but we can see a turnaround in not only the justice system, but every part of every system that affects every person, including those that are people of color. I implore you that as a social justice advocate, it is our job and our duty to make sure that all men are created equal, and that is lifted off the pages of our Constitution, but to the realities of our streets, our homes, and even our elderly who are fighting to stay in their homes. Thank you.
Okay, I just gotta say kudos to everyone on our panel because I was timing and everyone naturally stayed within that 2-minute time frame. Congratulations and wow. All right. So now let's jump right in. So what we're gonna do now is our speed dating question. I'm gonna ask for Attorney Chetson to pass it back to Kimberly. We'll start there. And each one of you will answer the question, the question, and then we'll do it how we do it. All of these questions are essentially questions that are rooted in what Emancipate NC and the people believe it takes to create a fair and equitable system. These are all questions that or issues or situations that we believe, if addressed properly, can have a monumental impact on the disparate outcomes that happen in our criminal justice system right now. So, once again, so everybody remembers the rules. These are yes or no answers, or questions. I want a yes or no answer. And then you have no more than 30 seconds if you feel you need to elaborate. Now, let me be clear. There's no need to elaborate if you don't want to. But you have 30 seconds to if you'd like to. All right? And again, I want to just make sure that we understand that all of these questions are rooted in a fundamental understanding that law and order and the law and order policies that America has embraced since the 70s have not kept us safe, right? They have been, for all intents and purposes, a disaster. We have incredible amounts of mass incarceration. We have people that are on probation and parole for decades for minor charges. We have over-policing of Black and brown communities, which necessarily results in the overpopulation of Black and brown people inside of our criminal justice systems. And I could go on and on. But all of these issues are deeply rooted in poverty, right? And so what we really want to see is the decriminalization of poverty. We want to see our criminal justice system move away from one that is punitive to one that is more restorative, to one that is less about punishing people for untreated trauma and more about finding ways to exercise the trauma that they've suffered and to stop that trauma from repeating. So I just wanted to give you all that to couch our speed dating questions. Okay, all right. So let's start. Number one, will dismissing charges originating from a pretextual traffic stop improve the Wake County criminal justice system? Now, pause. Pretextual charges, pretextual traffic stops, for those who don't know, are traffic stops or any kind of stop by law enforcement that is based on something that they don't really care very much about, right? A tail light is out. One that we've seen happen a lot in recent months and years here in North Carolina is that your license plate is not fully visible because you have a border around your license plate. So you are stopped for something like that. We are calling those pretextual stops, okay? That is what that means. Two children walking down the street and they stop to have a conversation and an officer pulls up to them to ask them what they're doing and why they're there. Pretextual, right? That leads to a search, that leads to other things, right? These are pretextual stops. So the question is, will dismissing charges that originate from pretextual traffic stops improve the Wake County criminal justice system? Dr. Muktarian.
Yes, not only will it improve the criminal justice system, but it will stop the degradation of our men. We may call them pre-contextual, but I call them consent to lynch. That is how Maurice Harden was killed, because a cop stood in wait at 3 o'clock in the morning to kill him by doing a traffic stop. Those consent searches are not warranted, and if it doesn't lead to a crime and only a traffic stop, then you're increasing the chances and not de-escalating the chances of confrontation, which happened in her case. So we would like to see those kind of stops removed and emancipated altogether.
Thank you. You were a little long, but that's okay.
Death is long.
Pretextual traffic stops are offensive. They are bad. I would dismiss those charges. The evidence is overwhelming that pretextual traffic stops cause police to target Black and brown communities and people of poverty. So pretextual traffic stops are offensive, and I would dismiss charges related to pretextual stops and demand that the police have a real reason to stop the car, not a fake reason.
Good word. And I agree with the other two speakers as well. Yes. So I was pulled over for my windows being tinted, even though I know they are the legal limit. And so this is a pretextual stop. Though I know that the police was hoping to smell anything, which they was not. But they was hoping to be able to search my vehicle. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stories like this that happen to Black and brown people, particularly men, in the city of Raleigh and Wake County. So pretextual stops charges needs to be dismissed, and this needs to be addressed, period.
There is a growing recognition that law enforcement does not need to be enforcing what are commonly called these days poverty offenses. And I think this is something that even lots of law enforcement agencies across this country are changing their approach to. And so, yes, should law enforcement have a valid reason for stopping someone? Absolutely. Should they stop someone purely for a pretextual basis? No. And I think that we need to be careful about, continuing to bring charges that really disadvantage people who might be poor and treat them unfairly through the system.
Just so we're clear, that was a no, correct?
Yeah, she said no.
Correct.
Good job. Okay, we're gonna start then with you. This was starting to bring it on the spot, Lorrin. I'm sorry about that. All right, next question. Will dismissing low-level marijuana charges improve the Wake County criminal justice system?
No, here in Wake County for more than 20 years, we have diverted drug charges, minor drug charges, marijuana charges, sent people to education, sent people to treatment. That gives lots of opportunities for individuals to avoid a life of substance abuse. I am currently working with law enforcement in places like Southlight to try and do pre-charge diversion of those types of offenses. But we need to be looking at ways to divert away from the criminal justice system, behavioral health issues. That is an issue that I've been committed to. But I do think that to give up on the opportunity to find or to connect people with treatment is a bad idea.
Yes, I agree these charges should be dismissed. Essentially what you're doing is you're criminalizing somebody for having an addiction. And though they may say that it will take away the opportunity for somebody to get treatment, there's other ways for them to get treatment as well. So when the district attorney chooses not to prosecute a low-level marijuana offenses, guess what the police is gonna do? They're gonna stop even charging people with these offenses, and then they could essentially do a reimagined public safety model and actually get these individuals help that they're coming across in the streets who have substance abuse issues. So I honestly believe that they should.
Yes, low-level marijuana charges should be dismissed, and in fact are being dismissed in other counties, just like Wake County in North Carolina. So in Mecklenburg County and in Durham County, they have taken a more treatment-centered approach, not an incarceration and prosecutorial-centered approach. The second point is that we do have diversion programs in Wake County, but they are frequently programs that have such restrictive, and I'm in the courtrooms every day in Wake County, and I've been in the courtrooms in district court in Wake County for 12 years every day. We do have programs, diversion programs in Wake County, but number one, they have such requirements that are strict that prohibit most people, many people, from enrolling in them. Second, the results are not.
I'm gonna have to stop you.
Sorry.
30 seconds.
They're expensive.
We're passing it off.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm gonna stop you.
Why I'm in favor of removing the continual bombardment of racism when it comes to low-level offenses, I would like to address the state of North Carolina and ask, once you make it legal, will you go back and fix all of the records that you have contaminated? Because if you smoke marijuana in North Carolina and they legalize it tomorrow, will you still be an addict? I know the city of Raleigh will make sure downtown Raleigh provides an entire network for you to smoke on the top of their roofs, and they will make sure that they have an entire market driven to marijuana. I just don't think African Americans are that population that have garnered enough interest for the state to make it legal.
Very good. Moving on to the next question. We'll start with you, Attorney Chetson. Will eliminating sentencing enhancements improve the Wake County criminal justice system?
Yes. I'll keep this one short, yes. It's,
Yes. So eliminating sentence enhancement will extremely improve Wake County's criminal justice system. So what do you see is an individual trying to put more time on an individual for low-level offenses with sentence enhancements. So this is extremely problematic, and it's done to black and brown populations more than anybody. Yes.
No, sentencing enhancements really are very rarely used in actuality in Wake County or in any county in the state, but they are important in terms of a public safety tool in appropriate cases.
I mean, I'm sorry for our viewing audience. I did not explain what a sentencing enhancer is. So just as a point of reference for you all, because this is all about educating and making sure that you are understanding what some of these problems are. The sentencing enhancer is something very much like, well, I guess the most prevalent form is a habitual felon status, right? It is North Carolina's version of 3 strikes. Now, I can tell you that I have not practiced in a very long time, but when I did practice with North Carolina Prisoners Legal Services, and I reviewed hundreds of, maybe thousands over a decade, probably thousands, Elizabeth worked there with me, of guilty pleas and criminal convictions, and I can tell you that the habitual felon status enhancer is used quite frequently, and that it is a real problem, and it leads directly to mass incarceration. So, but to be fair, we do not have accurate data because that data is not collected, but that's for a different form. All right, moving on, and let's start with Mr. Pittman. Here's the question. Will reviewing old convictions for errors and excessive sentencing improve the Wake County criminal justice system? Let me read that again. Will reviewing old convictions for errors and excessive sentencing improve the Wake County criminal justice system? Now, for context for my audience, what I'm asking is this. What we know is that we went through a period of time, decades even, where people were grossly over-sentenced. Some for drug charges, but not just drug charges. That is what we hear that's the context that we hear talked about in most frequently, but it is not only in that context, right? So, as we recognize how detrimental and harmful and how non-rehabilitative these excessive sentences are, the question is, should we, as a community, go back review old convictions and old sentences to see if they should be recalibrated to something that is shorter, that is more reflective of what we understand now about our criminal justice system. That is the question. Mr. Pittman.
We should definitely have a mechanism in place to go back and review these cases and these sentences. And so the question is, it isn't should we have it, is why we don't have it. That is the question we need to ask. And so this needs to be implemented as soon as possible. This is shameful.
You go, Lorrin. You both go, yeah, District Attorney.
Certainly in cases where there is a belief that there was an error made in the case, those cases absolutely should be reviewed. As to the sentence imposed at the time, I think that needs to be determined based on a case-by-case basis, and if there's any grounds to do that. But the sentencing laws are set by our legislature, and largely to go back and review and redo each and every one of those, absent some reason to do that, is really setting aside the will of the jury and the judge and the system at that time.
There is a process in North Carolina.
Yes.
We should go back and look at these cases that have exceptionally long sentences, and we should ensure that they comport with justice. We have many laws in the United States of America, but one of those is the 8th Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. Cruel and unusual punishment is prohibited in the United States of America. There are people serving 18-year sentences on trafficking offenses that are trafficking by possession. They possess too many oxycodone and opiates, and they are serving outrageous sentences, and that has been done by the Wake County District Attorney's Office in the last 6 years.
Yes.
I agree. Not only should we go back and revisit those cases, but we should put in place restorative justice and replace the resources that were taken out of the community in the first place that drove these young men and women to the detriment of a sentence, an unfair sentence. I think that too many resources are placed in the penal institution and not the restorative institution. And I think we have a duty and an obligation as a community to not lock our men away, but place our people in a platform by which they can thrive and be a part of the city that is almost number one in the nation.
I think we all have, but I'm happy to start again.
Oh, you start. Wait, who has started?
I think everybody has.
Oh, everybody has. Okay, we'll go back to District Attorney.
All right, and flip
All
it
right.
on. You need to flip it on. The button.
All right, here's our next question. Will ending cash bail improve the Wake County criminal justice system? By ending cash bail, for those who don't know what it means, cash bail is a system that we use here in Wake County and throughout the country to essentially put a price on people's freedom who have been charged with criminal offenses. And if you can afford to buy your freedom, you go home while you're awaiting trial. And if you cannot afford to buy your freedom, you sit in jail and your life unravels no matter what. The collateral consequences of even spending a couple of days in jail, whether a person is actually found guilty ultimately or not, can in many cases be irreparable. And the harm and the damage that can be done, in the opinion of Emancipate NC, grossly outweighs any concerns or safety concerns that may be addressed with the bail system, despite the fact that per our Constitution, the bail system is not supposed to be used. It is not a tool of community safety. It is supposed to be used and enforced for very specific reasons. And routinely, all over the state, the law is just being ignored. So the question again is, will ending cash bail improve the Wake County criminal justice system?
So, no, and the reason I say that is in California where this happened, more people actually ended up being detained than under a cash bail system. Let me be very clear that cash bonds should not be used to hold anybody in custody who does not need to be in custody under our law. And it's for that reason that we have been working, and we're one of 7 sites throughout the country with advancing pretrial policy and research to totally revise our pretrial practices. We have a very expansive pretrial release program here, and we are trying to get down to making sure that only those people who need to be held in custody for public safety reasons or otherwise are held. But in those situations where there is no preventative detention laws, and that's where we are here in North Carolina, we have to find some alternative to cash bail if we're going to replace that. And again, in those states where they have done away with it, it has ended up with more people, not less, more people in custody.
Yes, I believe it should be ended. Let me say this. I'm going to agree with the alternative. Let's take the alternative, right? Because people are being criminalized because they're poor and they're being held because they're poor, essentially. So when you have a group of loan sharks, essentially, which are the bail bondsmen, no shades to bail bondsmen, but it is what it is. So when you have a group of loan sharks who say, if your bail is not set this high, then I can't come and get you, and you got people sitting in jail for a $500 bond, a $300 bond, because a bondsman do not even want to go get them because their bail is too low, because they won't make money. This system is man, it's disgusting. Yes.
The short answer is maybe, and the reason is this. You can end up with a worse system. We have a worse system in the Eastern District of North Carolina, which is the federal courts where I practice. So you need to be careful. However, money should not be the reason why somebody gets kept in jail. And in Wake County, we have people with $1,000 bonds who cannot bond out, who are clearly nonviolent. We only lowered, during COVID, we were among Durham, Chatham County, and Orange County. Durham and Orange County and Chatham County lowered their jail populations miraculously by 40%, 30%, and this is from the News and Observer, so it's not me saying this. Wake County was the least effective at lowering the price, or lowering the jail population. So we can do much better. The last point I'll make about this is that there has been talk in Wake County for years about a risk assessment program, which I support a risk assessment program. People that are violent need to be kept in custody. However, that's not been implemented. Thank you.
I also support the end of the cash bail. Why? Because what you have is poverty criminalized. And what we have to stop doing is allowing those that are broken by this poverty system to pay twice with their lives. We see many of those who are in Wake County Detention on drugs. They have more in the detention center on drugs than they actually have in rehab. This is a problem. And again, we must address it because we want to address it and not because it sounds good today.
All right, Dr. McKay, we'll start with you on our last question.
Or not our last question, second to last. Oh, not the last, sorry. Okay, so. Will a set of ADAs, that's assistant district attorneys, walled off from the primary office, and what I mean is that function as a separate entity within the district attorney's office, that solely considers prosecuting police misconduct, improve the Wake County criminal justice system?
I do apologize. I had to hold it. Okay, I'm sorry. Attorney Blake Grove, could you please repeat that? I heard police and froze.
Yes, I said, I'll shorten it, it's kind of long. Will a set of district attorneys or a set of assistant district attorneys within the district attorney's office that are solely consider and solely prosecute police misconduct Will that improve the Wake County criminal justice system?
Yes, absolutely. I think we have to have a group of people who pay direct attention to corruption in our criminal justice system. That includes the police, but any entity that has anything to do with the justice system. Internal affairs needs to be dismantled. And I think we should have community liaisons that are present to make sure the ADAs are in partnership with the community to make sure that we're safe from that corruption.
Yes. There should be a walled-off group of prosecutors to investigate and prosecute police officers who commit abuses or are corrupt. We have two issues presently. I represented Kyron Hinton back when I was in law school at the Public Defender's Office. He called me a week after he was beaten and sick with a dog up near 440. The prosecution of those individuals who were responsible for that, in my view, was inadequate. I also am familiar with the Omar Abdullah case.
Yes.
And everyone
I'm
should
gonna-
Google
Attorney-
Omar Abdullah.
Attorney Chetson, I'm gonna have to stop you. You can come back to Abdullah later. Okay.
Yes, come on with it.
Yes, I definitely agree. It should be a group of ADAs walled off from the district attorney's office. So it is, a house divided can't stand, right? And so what we were seeing is that the district attorney office is always upholding what Raleigh Police Department do, misconduct or not. So in the case with Kerwin Hinton, just to point out something, no Raleigh police officers was charged, even though we all seen the footage. And not to throw no shade, Freeman, I'm just calling it for what it is, a spade is spade. And so in my opinion, if you have somebody walled off, a group of individuals, it is more likely that we will receive justice, particularly black and brown populations.
My brothers is killed by Raleigh PD, and that has been done yet.
To have the resources, to have a specific unit to look at police misconduct is not where we are in reality, okay? So, no, I do not believe that it would help. What I do think is that the elected DA has a responsibility to review these cases and to make the decision as to whether a use of force is appropriate or not. And in those situations where there has been evidence to prove police excessive force or misconduct, I have not shied away from making those difficult decisions.
No charge. Are we allowed to ask questions?
That ends, I think everybody answered that question, correct? Yes? Okay, so that ends our speed date. So now, we have a baseline, right? For what the folks on our panel and what we think, we at Emancipate, think it will take to create a more equitable system. And so now what we're gonna do is ask each one of our panelists to give us a 3 to 5 minute explanation of what you see the future of justice in Wake County looking like. So each panelist, what I want you to tell us is, all things being equal, if all resources were available, if we did not have any restraints, because the truth of the matter is, y'all, where there's political will, there are no restraints, right? So, if there were no restraints, what would justice system in Wake County look like to you that is fair and is equitable?
Let's start with district attorney.
So first of all, to live in an environment in the criminal justice system where there are no restraints on resources would be phenomenal. And one of the things that, all of these studies show that talk about implicit bias in prosecution is that the more cases that prosecutors have to handle, the more difficult it is and the less time they have to make decisions and to make appropriate decisions. And so, I think that resources and making sure we have sufficient people looking at these cases really would be a huge step in the right direction. Unfortunately, the legislature controls that, and that is not something that local government or that I have control over. Over the last few years, we have made some important strides in criminal justice reform within the criminal justice system here in Wake County. I think a system that continues to move in that direction, again, looks at and revises our pretrial release policies, which we are in the process of doing, to ensure that people are not being held pretrial who do not need to be held pretrial, that we have and continue to have ample diversion programs. We have about a dozen different diversion programs to give people with addictions or mental health problems second chances and to link them with treatment. We need to get behavioral health issues out of the criminal justice system, but we need to do that by linking people with the appropriate treatment and resources and not just leaving them unhelped within our community if we really want things to improve. I think we need to continue the important work that my office has started in building collaborations and helping people re-enter the community when they exit the criminal justice system, and work on expungements and making sure that people are able to get jobs and educational opportunities and housing. And those are things I'm proud to have worked on over the last few years with a larger community collaborative. Folks, there is work that can be done in the criminal justice system, but we also need to be truthful about the fact that the criminal justice system is the bottom of a larger funnel, and that many of the reasons that people end up in the criminal justice system have to do with health inequities, lack of mental health services, lack of substance abuse services, lack of economic opportunity. And until we as a society get serious about addressing all of those issues, we in the criminal justice system cannot alone fix the inequities that we see in our community. It is also true, and sadly true, that the number of children impacted by gun violence in this state more than doubled over the last year, and that more than a majority of those impacted by gun violence in this state are in communities of color. Our office every day works very hard to seek justice on behalf of victims of domestic violence and violent crime, and many, many of those people are from our African American communities and other communities of color. And so ignoring criminal conduct, turning a blind eye to violence, does not improve where we are as a community. And so my goal as we continue on this quest is, one, to make sure we are prioritizing what we are paying attention to in order to keep our community safe, that we are working to give people a second opportunity, either through linking them with appropriate resources through diversion programs, or as they come out of the criminal justice system, making sure that we are helping them re-enter the community in a way that they can succeed. From day one, I have said that public safety is not about how many people you lock up. It is about how do you stop people from having to come into the criminal justice system by shutting down recidivism.
Can you repeat the question one more time? Just for clarification, because I want to make sure it was.
No, the question now is fair because I messed it up a bunch of times. So the question is, all things being equal, with no treasury resources, what would the Wake County criminal justice system look like if it was one that was rooted in equity, rooted in fairness, and working toward and committed to ending the criminalization of poverty?
That was beautiful. Just explain it. This would be a beautiful system that would be equitable for all, right? And so I want to make one thing clear. Hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. This is a known fact.
Not necessarily.
So what this means is we have to look at the social ills that's going on in the community. So what we do is a lot of the ills and issues that are going on and people are criminalized for, there's social issues underlying these problems. So this is what we have to address, right? So what I would see is somebody tending to somebody who have mental health illnesses, we wouldn't be shutting down. And I'm sorry, because shutting down Dix and creating a park out of it, funnel people with mental health issues going into the Wake County criminal justice system, right? Not putting enough resources for individuals having mental health crisis, for individuals having substance abuse issues. So it's resources that we would have to pour into these different funnels to help keep these people out of this particular system. But not only that, it's stuff that individuals in the district attorney office could do and implement right now. One of those things is what? A reimagine a great system. We wouldn't have a death penalty in North Carolina. It wouldn't be no death penalty in the state of North Carolina. Or it wouldn't be no death penalty pursued out of Wake County at all. So reimagining this system will look beautiful in a lot of ways. And it will be one that will be just and equitable for the people, right? But in all reality and actuality, how likely is that to happen? How likely is that to happen? Because even if they had the resources to make this happen, guess what? It will be an excuse for this not to happen. Because guess what? They love, and when I say they, I mean those in position of power who control the money, who are really the unseen hands behind controlling this system. They love to address the symptoms of a problem and not address the problem. Right? So they'll address the symptom, but won't address the problem. So if you got a cold, guess what? You ain't gonna go, you're gonna get something for your cough. But you're going to get something that's going to take care of this virus that you got going on. And so what we're doing and what we're seeing now is them addressing the cost. So a lot of these costs are social issues. We need to address these social issues, right? But also hold these individuals who are accountable for not fixing these social issues now. We may not have the capital to implement some of these programs now, but I promise you and I guarantee you it is things that they can do in every office right now that can make this criminal justice system more equitable for everybody. I promise you that. It's just the will if they're trying to do it or not. And this is the point where, so I want to reimagine something right now. Right now. I don't want to look at what if we had this amount, observable amount of money. No, I wanted something right now that you could do right now. That's an equitable system for me, because when I leave out of here and the police get behind me, I got to worry about if I'm going to lose my life or not. I can't wait for this imaginary sum of money to come from me. And they stop me because my window tenant, which is the legal limit, in case anybody's listening. I gotta stop for that. Which is a pretextual stop. See, all this tied together. But with that being said, y'all, it'll be a more equitable system, and we can imagine, but it's things that people can do right now that can make this system more equitable. Let's not wait for this imaginary sum of money to come. Let's start doing it right now. If you're really about the action of committing to racial equity and true inclusion for all.
So, let me make sure I can work. And finally, at the end of this, I'm going to figure out how to use this microphone. The first thing I'd like to say is we need to end the death penalty in Wake County. I represented folks on facing the death penalty from the Wake County District Attorney's Office. Wake County has sought the death penalty in the last 6 years more frequently than any other county in North Carolina, and that is not me saying that. That is Gretchen Engel with the Center for Death Penalty Litigation. In 2019, we in Wake County, our district attorneys sought the death penalty in 2 cases: an African American man and a white man. I happened to have been assigned to represent the white man who was involved in a triple homicide. And issues of guilt or innocence were not really an issue. It was just about what kind of punishment they should get. The jury returned the death penalty on the African American person, but not the white guy. And I'd like to think that that's because I'm a fantastic lawyer, but it probably has to do with the fact that the white person had access just by the way our country is structured. And no one in particular is at fault for this. It's a structural issue. But that person had access to mental health. So we could go back and look at the records and we could say he didn't just invent a mental health defense. And so for 8 weeks we tried that case in Superior Court in Wake County. And the jury, in a matter of very short time, said he's guilty of murder, but he shouldn't be put to death. No one here believes, and I think no sane person believes, that violent crimes don't need to be punished. That's not the question. The question when we're talking about resources is how we divide up the resources and how we apply them. In Wake County, we have a no-drop policy when it comes to marijuana, misdemeanor marijuana, for which you're not even entitled to a lawyer if you are in a certain record level. So there are people, young men, going in there, largely African American because of the way the policing works, who are facing prosecution for these issues. And they do not have a lawyer. And yet, if they had a lawyer like me, I'd like to say I'm a great lawyer, and I'm a good lawyer, but I would win the case because you can't prove it by smell any longer in North Carolina, because hemp is legal. So, I'm getting down in the weeds, but the fact of the matter is, we can focus on applying our resources appropriately. And that means focusing on violent crime, on crime that really hurts other people, and thinking differently about how to approach crimes of poverty and crimes of addiction, essentially addiction. We heard some talk about expungements, and expungements are great, Second Chance Act. But our district attorney inserted what's called a poison pill, or asked for the poison pill to be inserted into the Second Chance Act. The Second Chance Act, and I'll just speak loudly so that y'all can hear me.
Here, I'm gonna give you mine.
No worries, I'm just having trouble.
But I'm also gonna tell you, you got about 30 seconds.
I'll be quick. So, Second Chance Act is a way to let people get back their ability to expunge their records. And we should have more of that. So the last two things are we need to hold police accountable for misconduct like Omar Abdullah and Google him. And for 18 months, the district attorney has known there's been a problem with prosecutions that landed 15 people in jails for a combined total of 2.5 years on fake charges. Fake charges. There is currently a federal lawsuit about this against members of the Raleigh Police Department. We need to finally end pay-for-play. When we talk about diversion, that's great, but we need to make it affordable, meaning you don't have to go and pay $500 for a diversion program and maybe hundreds of dollars more when you need to put food on your table.
Come on with it.
So we need to do that. The last bit is we need to build an inclusive DA's office.
Yes.
We have had a turnover rate in Wake County going back to 2018. There are 43 ADAs in Wake County. I counted. 28 have left the office since 2018.
Okay.
5 in the last 6 months.
Okay, Attorney Chetson.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Sorry, I can get passionate.
But we want to make sure we have time to get to questions from the audience.
Passion is a good thing. Let me say this. There's a law that holds all of us accountable, and it's called love. And one of the most powerful laws I've ever heard says, he that hates his brother is a murderer, and the love of God is not in him. Let me say this. Guns is not our problem. Hatred is our problem. And when you legalize your hatred and package it in a career, when you package it in a way that you can strip an entire community and move people out, and we're not talking about guns, we're talking about pure hatred. I just had to turn in my mother's nephew, not because he used the gun, but he got in a fist fight, and his friend who he sold drugs with, sold dummy drugs with, slept in the car with, fell and hit his head.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Allegedly happened.
But let me say this, regardless, we've known each other for years, and they both shared the same anger. Let me say this, we don't have a mental health issue all the time. We have a mental anguish that comes from anger, from longevity of injustices. We don't need to go see a psychiatrist. Somebody else may need to go see a psychiatrist. And I think we paid enough into the system that the state of North Carolina shouldn't have enough money to pay the DA's office for a police department that is aided by the ADA. So let me say this. I'm not looking for that utopia down the street. We cannot afford not to have it today. And we're calling for it today.
Yes, thank All right, so at this point, we are going to, okay, hold on. We're gonna open it up to questions. We're going to limit this section because we want to be mindful of time. We are at 6:55. This has been a really good, informative session, and I have done so many things. How proud I am of myself for how little I have talked. So, but that being said, I'm gonna come get that microphone. I need to watch it too. And I'm going to start taking some questions. So, all right, I'm gonna start here.
I'll be quick.
Okay, I'm gonna start here. You got a question? No, you sure? Yeah. All right. Serena, I'm not playing with you. Quick. Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so this is my question to the panel, and mainly I'm directing my question to Lorrin Freeman, DA Lorrin Freeman. My question is, with the DA's office and with the cases that's been heard in Wake County, the racial disparity is what I did not hear you speak on. And that's the thing that's concerning the most when it comes to a lot of cases that go through Wake County. And also with warrants, and I know you say you've been doing a lot to do diversion programs to try to help those who are going through the legal system, get supports in small crimes. Now, me myself personally, I've been trying to reach you for the past 3 weeks to discuss a warrant clinic with you, to see what we can do to get small charges dismissed and fees decreased for those who have warrants for traffic violations and minor misdemeanors. And I was told by your office that I'm not allowed to have your email address to contact you. And I'm wondering why, as a public official and a elected official, I don't have access to you to have conversations with you about community supports.
I will be happy to meet with you. So I'm not sure who told you that I would not, but I have had an open door policy and I'm happy to meet with you. On the issues that you've talked about, we've got a number of things that we have been working on and will continue to work on. We work very, very closely with the Campbell Community Law Clinic here in Wake County. We have done a lot of driver license restoration and remission of fees and fines so that people can get their driver's license back. We are in the process of doing a mass project with the North Carolina Pro Bono Center so that we can provide mass debt relief on driver license restoration. We have worked very closely with them before I came over here tonight. I dismissed a case for a gentleman. There was an order for arrest out on from 2002. We work closely again with the Campbell Law Clinic to try and get those types of things taken care of. But
my main concern is, why can't I reach you? Why is your email not allowed for the public? Is there a reason?
I am not sure why you were told that. Plenty of people have my email, and I'll be glad to give you a card before I leave here tonight.
Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you.
How y'all doing tonight? So as y'all know, my brother's name is Maurice Antonio Harden, died by Raleigh PD on June 5th, 2013. My other brother name is Jaquan Julius Terry. He was shot 9 times by Raleigh PD. So one of my questions is, I don't have anything against anyone, but y'all so ready to announce George Floyd. Fayetteville did so much stuff for George Floyd. However, you did not do anything for the 7 young men that's been murdered by Raleigh PD. 2 of my brothers are them. We did not even get a I'm sorry apology, but we did get apology saying your brother did not have a gun. Lorrin Freeman, I have met with you several times, me and Miss Kimberly. You have brushed my family to the side, and it has been very disrespectful. My mother has still yet to get an apology. Police harassed my family for several years. And I would like to know, why can't the young men that's in Raleigh that's been murdered, why can't they be memorial? Instead of parading George Floyd, let's talk about the 7 that's died.
Ms. Clyde, with all due respect, the evidence in your case was that your brother did have a gun.
No, that's a lie. You told me in front of Miss Kimberly, and I got it on email.
And we met with you. Our job in each of these cases is to review the evidence, and where we have evidence that there is wrongdoing, we take action. but we cannot charge and prosecute people when there is not evidence to support a prosecution. And in your brother's case, as I told you, there was not evidence to do that. Those cases are very difficult. They are very challenging. And you did come and meet with me. One of the things I tried to provide,
but you did not meet with my mother.
that I tried to provide to you all is transparency. And so I made myself available. We had the agent there, we had the report there. And then you and I talked several times after that, not only about that case, but other things that you had going on.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's not a problem,
And
but.
so as to whether
you
there
haven't
would be
did your
memorials
part.
for those folks, that is not within the purview of the district attorney. My responsibility is to review those cases and to make a determination as to whether the officer has violated the law or not.
But you can make
Okay,
changes.
hold on just a
You can
second.
make changes. You talk about
Can we-
George Floyd very frequently,
Can-
but you never talk about the 7 young men that's been killed by
Can we
Robert
give
PD.
the other panelists an opportunity to respond to this particular situation, because this is where we are right now? And where you think, how you think it could have been handled differently, what could have been done differently, what does the community need?
Well, let me say this. I think not only is the deaths of Jaquan Terry and Maurice Harden just disrespectful to humanity, but if Jaquan Terry did have a gun, and I would say possibly he did, I would say this: why is it abnormal for him to have one? Why is it that when we see a black man with a gun, he is not worthy to have it? In the United States of America, the way we get gunned down, should not every black man have a gun? Not only that, the only reason why they don't have a gun is because 9 times out of 10, they brought upon themselves a felony offense through drugs. That drug offense comes from poverty. Poverty that they have put us in. So let's start from the root cause. And then you take me to why is a black man running like Jaquan Terry to jump over? Why is Akiel Dinkins running with a gun? Why is any black man running? Why can't he stand his ground? Why can't he stand like they did downtown Raleigh with his guns and parade them around up and down Fayetteville Street? Let me say this. Restorative justice says that we do open carry. And just like slavery, we was never unemployed. We never were unemployed. So for you to give us a job is not a favor. It is a right. That's restorative justice.
So I hear the pain. I'll be quick. I'll be quick. And I wish I could take more time, but I hear your pain and I understand where you're coming from. What I would say is that this is why we need a separate team of prosecutors to review when police should be prosecuted or not and have it walled off so that we don't have the belief that something's been done wrong.
And the police should be drug tested too, but they're not.
All right, we got about 10 minutes left.
I got a question.
And hold on, okay, listen, y'all. I can't get to everybody.
I'm gonna ask
but
my
I
question.
will.
I'm gonna ask my question.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask my question.
Let me ask you this question. Let me ask you a question. Is your question for District Attorney Freeman?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm gonna need you to hold that one, because we done already had a lot for her.
No. I wanna know, how is it? I'm sorry. I wanna know, how is it that you don't think that you have to indict RPD when Officer Omar Abdullah met the CI years ago, the first time they ever met, it was because that dude sold him fake drugs. So how can you say that there's no way that Officer Omar Abdullah had any idea that CI had it within himself to do what he did? And if he got duped and he got fooled, what does that say for RPD? That's all that. That's what I came for.
And I'm glad you told me.
You asked it for the 15 of them.
Let me, before we even start answering, I need for all of us to take a minute and sit with that trauma that this just gave us. Okay?
It's real.
It is that emotion. It is that trauma.
You can't make that make sense.
It is that trauma and the burden of that trauma that makes it necessary for us to have not just conversations, but solution-based conversations, so that there is not a segment of our population who, number one, feels like they are silenced, and number two, feels like their pain is not recognized. There are problems in our system, and there are ways for our system to work so that everyone feels whole. And what we just saw right there was a person that don't feel whole. That's a problem.
You see a dog with a bone.
That's a problem.
You see a dog.
Okay, I got time to talk too much. Sorry, I was trying to do so good. I got one more. I got time for one question. Now,
You need to answer that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lauren.
Let me say first and foremost that for anybody to be wrongly charged is a nightmare for any prosecutor. It is never our intent that people be charged wrongfully. Secondly, as I have said before, this is an ongoing investigation and currently is a pending case. And so it is not something, unfortunately, and Mr. Chetson is well aware of this. The rules of professional conduct for attorneys prevent me from being able to talk about that case in detail tonight. I am aware that it is a case of grave concern for the community.
Are you aware that he knew that CI sold aspirins to him as cocaine? How can you say that the CI should not be, the cops should not be indicted, when the reality is the way that the cops met the CI years ago, I feel like in 2018, they arrested him. They actually targeted him, they arrested him, they took him to jail. Turns out what that dude sold, that CI that they had then, was crushed aspirins as cocaine. Officer Abdullah and a handful of other officers then nicknamed the CI aspirin. And that's the same CI that charged, that had my son behind bars, had my nerves tore up. How in the world Officer Omar Abdul named him aspirins? I could go from, where is this money? All this money you're putting out into the city. Where is a paper trail? How do we know these cops aren't pocketing this money? We're out here pussyfooting around topics and whatnot when the reality is it's real in the field right now. I almost lost my son for a minimum of 7.5 years.
And this is
for nothing.
And this is why
and you can say nothing.
Okay. When this matter came up, this is why it was important to call in an independent investigation, the State Bureau of Investigation. That has happened, okay? And that is what is still ongoing. We, at this point, have pending charges. But let me be very clear about something about this, okay? Even if we cannot criminally prosecute, if
what do you
we
mean?
do not
If
have,
it was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. I'm tired of all these ifs and imaginary stuff.
just because we may not end up with evidence in a case sufficient to prosecute someone does not mean it is not the same thing as me saying that everything was done the way that it should have been.
Make it right.
Okay?
Make it right.
So this is, as Mr. Chetson has said, there is a federal civil lawsuit, and the city of Raleigh and their attorneys are working on that and working with the plaintiff's attorneys on it to reach some resolution of it. That is separate and apart from whether
So
there
we're
is
not
a
going to talk
criminal
about the mediation that's
prosecution.
taking place on the 28th? Because we're trying to mediate.
Right. What I would say, ma'am, and please, and I respect very much what you have been through.
So there is no mediation for the 28th?
That is
Where
not.
everybody's going to be introducing evidence?
That is not
And
part
see-
of, right. My responsibility in this case
But I
is to
can't.
criminally investigate it. That is separate. I'm not
I'm
involved
uninterested
in
in
the
anything
civil.
else you have to say.
Okay, I'm not involved in the civil lawsuit. Okay, that's not part of what my responsibility in the case is.
No, you're indicting the wrong people.
Is there anybody else on the panel that wants to address this quickly?
I just want to speak to this. This is shameful. This is disgusting. This is disheartening, and it is no reason that you should, Lorrin Freeman, at least call for the process for them to be expedited of this investigation and for charges to be brought against all these officers that participated in this scheme. To knowingly charge somebody with something and let them sit is disgraceful.
During a pandemic.
And you, during a pandemic.
And no social distancing. During a pandemic. No social distancing. You can look at the camera, because I was in the courtroom watching my son.
You should.
And all them people.
And Lorrin Freeman, you are the buck should stop with you when it comes to things of that nature. So if you could expedite this process of getting this investigation rolling, by all means, please do.
I wanted to get some more questions in, but I really feel like it's important for us to stay here. Just for a few minutes, and if there's anybody else on the panel that wants to speak to this, let's go ahead, because I think it's important that we hear.
Because it's happening right now in our backyard.
I think it's important that we hear and expound upon the frustration that we're hearing from this woman, and also that we address that real anger and fear that exists in the Black community, because this mother here is just one mother.
Yes.
But it's a bunch of us. It's a bunch of us.
And that level of anger and that level of pain.
And I ain't trying to talk about it.
That level of pain shouldn't exist in a system that is equitable. Dr. Muktarian.
Let me say this, that, my apologies on behalf of a county that blatantly disrespects Black citizens. My apologies to you, mother. Let me say this. Back 2016, there is a young man by the name of James Richburg who was stopped by Wake Forest Police Department. He was pulled over and they accused him of having meth, but it was sugar on his napkin. When they pulled him over, it was initially for a traffic stop, but he just went crazy and said, "You got Molly or meth on your shirt." He said, "No, this is donut sugar." He supposedly tested it. He arrested Mr. Richburg. And then 30 days later, SBI, or the labs for the state, came back and dismissed the charges. Dismissed the charges and said, yes, it's sugar. Now, 3 years later, he get pulled over again from a traffic stop. This time, they tried the same tactic. Mr. Richburg won't have it. He said, call your supervisor. I'm tired of being harassed. This is wrong. Because he said, I'm going to file grievance against you, Wake Forest Police Department went to his children's mom house where he stayed because he just got out of the federal penitentiary. Went to the projects and had them evicted by using that drug charge that was dismissed. Now, I went back and I wanted to know, when the officer initially tested it, what did it come back and say? Because if you saw it and it said negative, then why did you book him and prosecute him and go through the 30-day? Why are we doing this? Why are we continuing? And then you get them put out. And then his children get on drugs. And his children are now sitting down at the county waiting for the feds right now. So it's a continual bombardment of legacy-driven deficit to our communities. When I approached Lorrin Freeman with this, I got a letter that says you trying to practice law without a license. Well, obviously your ADAs are not practicing law, and they got a license. Our people are dying, and you don't have enough resources or the heart to put in so you can prosecute bad cops. But I will do it for you for free, and I don't want your license to do it because it means nothing in our community. I solicit the state of North Carolina that if you're going to represent poor and impoverished people, first you must have a heart. Thank you.
And I just I'm going to stop us here because I promised y'all 7:15 we will be coming to an end. But, go ahead. I'm giving you
two quick points.
Real quick.
For anybody who thinks this can't happen to white folks, in 2017, I had a client out of Garner that was pulled over by Garner police and charged with trafficking in MDMA. There was no MDMA in it, and he sat in jail for a month and a half. So those families out there that believe, well, it can't happen to me, it can happen to you, and we need to be very careful about that. The second thing is that the federal lawsuit has revealed the absolute problem in Wake County DA's office with our Giglio Brady policy. This is the policy. It's one page. Mecklenburg County has a 14-page policy that lays out when the prosecutor has to turn over evidence that the police have lied or behaved improperly.
And just so, just as a point of edification, Giglio is a list that district attorneys are required to keep when law enforcement officers or any evidence comes up that brings the case in question, that brings real serious credibility issues about the person or the law enforcement officer who is the primary investigator. So the Giglio list is an important thing. Those of you who are not following our website, follow Emancipate NC, look it up, follow us on Twitter and on Facebook, as we will do our very, very best to explain some of the more high-level concepts. And it's important that you understand them as we go into this reimagining, because there's so very often, we have conversations about criminal justice reform that don't mean anything. This conversation tonight, I hope everybody feels like it meant something. Thank you so much to everyone who was able to come out. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you so much to our audience that is viewing. And this is the first of many conversations that will not just be conversations, but that will be conversations that will result in our ability to demand policy changes, for our ability to demand equity, for our ability to demand fairness. Because make no mistake, this criminal justice system is ours. And so it should look like we want it to look like. It should function the way we want it to function. And it certainly should not function in a way that leaves any mother with that level of pain. It should not. So to that end, I will say thank you so much for caring enough to give us some of your time on a Thursday night. Thank you for coming out. And you ain't gotta go home.
Can I make an announcement? Can I make an announcement?
Oh, what announcement? I'm sorry.
Okay.